Your world, your challenges, your faith. When faith within engages the world without, there's power. It's living life from the inside out.
COVID-19 vaccines are dividing the American church. In the U.S., evangelicals are the most resistant to the vaccines, with many asking for exemptions for religious reasons. As Americans, we have the right, but as followers of Jesus, is this the right thing to do?
It really gets down to Jesus' most fundamental teaching about what the greatest commandments were.
Christian theologian, author, and business consultant Curtis Chang encourages Christians to take the vaccine because of their faith. He does this through his website, Redeeming Babel, and the website Christians and the Vaccine, which he and others launched in early 2021.
Of course, the first is love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. The second is love your neighbor as yourself. And that, I think, is the fundamental reason why every Christian, unless there are some very, very severe medical complications, should be taking the vaccine, because we take the vaccine for others.
Attorney Christine Pratt focuses on the vaccine mandate for the First Liberty Institute. It's a Christian nonprofit organization that litigates First Amendment cases on religion.
It really depends on the individual and, the moral witness that they're called to make on earth. And I have a lot of respect for the people I've spoken to.
Those calling First Liberty connect their objections to the vaccines to their Christian faith in several ways. The primary way, she says, is that they believe that the COVID-19 vaccines are too connected to abortion.
So the Johnson & Johnson was created out of a cell line that was created out of aborted fetal tissue. Mm-hmm. It was an abortion that took place in 1985. And the other two vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, were not created, but they were tested for efficacy before placing them on the market, using cell lines from aborted fetal tissue from an abortion in 1972. And so because of that, that's probably the most common objection.
Curtis Chang points out the difference between cells and a cell line.
We know that the vaccine itself does not contain any aborted tissue, that there was no aborted tissue that was used in the development testing. This is a cell line. This is cells that are derived many, many generations removed from what we think potentially could have been an abortion back in 1973.
He suggests that those wary of the vaccine for this reason look to the life of Jesus.
Read Jesus. He's constantly touching lepers. He's talking to prostitutes, because he realizes that simply because something had a distant origin in an act of sin does not make that act itself sinful. The gospel is clear. All of us have sinned. We are all in some ways tainted by sin. The notion that we can keep our hands free from anything that had any connection to sin is contra to the very promise of the gospel that sin can be redeemed. And that's really what the vaccine is. It's a redemption of potential act of abortion back in 1973. And we ought to embrace that redemption.
I asked both Curtis Chang and Christine Pratt if, in a counterintuitive way, appealing for these exemptions might actually erode the cause of religious liberty.
Absolutely, because the greatest threat to any right is the abuse of that right. And using religious exemptions for the vaccine is an abuse of religious liberty. It's an abuse because a legitimate exercise of religious exemption here has to fulfill two things. There has to be a legitimate religious belief, and two, that religious belief has to be sincerely held. On both grounds, since legitimate religious belief and two, sincerity, this fails. And the reason it fails is because, one, there is no legitimate religious belief. There is no religious doctrine, no scripture, no religious leader that is the head of any religious tradition that would say there's a legitimate religious reason why you should not take the vaccine. There just isn't. So we're hijacking religion here for something else that's going on.
Do some of these objections actually erode the protections for religious liberty, or even sort of in the court of public opinion? Does it fall very flat? And I would say sometimes it can, and I think we should be concerned. But it's funny because I think that the legal standard is the correct one, even in the court of public opinion. If someone has a sincerely held religious belief, first of all, that you should obey God.
Yes.
Even if the concern is that it makes God look bad. That's not really for us to judge. And that's been a criticism, that's been used to persecute the church for many years over many different issues.
The legal protections people are appealing for in these exemptions cover sincerely held religious objections to the pandemic vaccines, not medical concerns, not political objections, not health concerns. I asked both Christine Pratt and Curtis Chang how people who object to the vaccines might drill down to find the source of their objection.
My encouragement is to actually make sure that you are getting at least minimally get exposed to the alternative viewpoint. At least expose yourself to not just the thing that's been feeding to you. So a good starting place is to go to our website, christiansandthevaccine.com. I'm not asking you to believe everything that website says, but it's a different view than probably that you have experienced before. It is interviews with leading experts, both in science and in theology, from a variety of denominations, from a variety of political perspectives.
You try to test to see, are your beliefs based on political concerns? Is it because you don't trust the government in power, the Democrats in power? Is it a political basis? Mm-hmm. Is it a medical basis? I've spoken to some people who, once I talk to them and ask a few questions, it becomes pretty clear that they actually have medical concerns, not religious concerns. And that kind of stuff is not sincere. It's not a sincerely held religious belief. And you shouldn't use legal protections for religious beliefs for other beliefs. You should only use them for religious beliefs.
So what questions might we ask to discern if our concerns are actually religious? So if I hear you correctly, if you were going to ask yourself questions, one of the questions would be, have I familiarized myself with the other point of view, right? And another would be, have I talked to my doctor, not a doctor, not watched a doctor, but gone to the person who has known me as my primary physician, and what has that person said? So those would be two questions you could ask yourself. Am I hearing you correctly?
I think everybody should do those two things. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
The best advice I can give on that is to start with the question, why? If you have hesitation about getting vaccinated, just really search that question of why and take some notes, stream of consciousness, and write out all the reasons why you oppose it. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, though, there can be some overlap.
My guests have been Christine Pratt of First Liberty and Curtis Chang of Christians and the Vaccine. Dive deeper into this topic by going to firstliberty.org and christiansandthevaccine.com. I'm Martha Menegas Foster with Inside Out on Family Life.